hours, and thank you all for attending the meeting of this Governance and Audit Committee this evening on Thursday, the 29th of September. If we go to the agenda, item number 1, apologies for absence.
No apologies, Chair, but Councillor Harris will be attending slightly later.
That could be noted. Any declarations of interest? No, there are none. Item 3 of the report, which is the minutes of the last meeting, which are contained in pages 3 to 14. Anyone prepared to move, or any comments? Norma?
Thank you, Chair. On the minutes, I'd like to record my thanks for having an action list at the rear of the minutes. It's a pedantic issue, but I did pick up a number of actions that weren't on the list, and it's really good practice as you go through the minutes, whether there is an action, to write in bold action so that they're picked up. And I think I picked up 2 under item 7 on waiving of contracts, where I think the Chief Internal Auditor was coming back to the committee once the system was reviewed and the new way of commissioning agreed, and that all contracts on the corporate contract register it was to be checked that all contracts were on there. I don't think that was on the action list.
Noted, Chair. Thank you very much.
Any other? No. Okay. Someone prepared to move the minutes as a correct record, subject to those amendments? Thank you, Councillor Horton. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jordan. All in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Item 4 then on the agenda is the annual report on compliments. Sorry.
Rising from minutes. Sorry.
I don't know what the policy is on this authority. Normally, you don't deal with matters arising from the
what I want to bring up, I can bring up elsewhere. It's okay.
Thank you very much. Oh.
Just to let you know that there's no matters arising actually on the agenda. Thank you.
Item 4 then on the report is the annual report on compliments, comments and complaints management 2022, pages 15 to 30. Who's taken the report? Oh, thank you. And welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Chair. So just quick intros. I'm Mark Blaise, our Digital Services Manager. Complaints is new to People Policy and Transformation, and also fairly new in post is Bridie Edwards, Complaint Resolution Manager, and she's going to take us through the report just in highlight form, and then obviously we'll take any questions if that's okay.
Thank you, Mark. So this is the 4th annual report which has been provided to Cabinet, and this is the 2nd time it's been presented to the Governance and Audit Committee. I wanted to just do a recap over some progress over the last year. So as Mark just said, we've transitioned to a new service area, moving from city services to People Policy and Transformation, and that took place in April. As Mark also said, I've taken on the post in June, and the original post holder is currently in Torfaen on a secondment. We have some relatively new members to the team, and they are developing and enhancing their complaints handling knowledge. Some other progress was some development of training modules that was carried out, so we're looking to roll out that in the next financial year. Some sort of planned developments. Bear with me a sec. So going forward, we're looking to develop and support the team and further develop working relationships with service areas. We aim to deliver some workshops face-to-face and interactive via Teams to service areas to improve their confidence in complaint handling and improve their quality of responses. Another area, we're looking to improve the reporting function. So currently we use a system called My Council Services So we're looking at the way that we standardise our processes to ensure consistency in capturing the data accurately. Some of the implementation of the Complaints Standards Authority issued a model policy a number of years back, and the implementation of that involved us updating our corporate policy. But the implementation of that in practice, the Complaints Standards Authority are going to be working closely with authorities to develop them and enhance through training. Yeah, one of the other methods as well, we'll be looking at encompassing some equalities data, which with our mechanisms for recording feedback, if we can capture that, we can provide a more targeted outreach to the communities in Newport. Oh, gone to the top. A key focus area as well for the next year will be developing our data analysis in partnership with the Newport Intelligence Hub. And we will also be reviewing our unacceptable actions policy and working closely with our contact centre colleagues to review how we support customers who can present sometimes with challenging communication styles. So we'll be working closely with them as well going forward. And finally, we'll be looking to embed the complaints team into the wider digital services area. The Public Services Ombudsman for Wales, as I just said about the Complaints Standards Agency, they're going to be working with local authorities to embed the model complaints policy. They will be offering training as well to officers and extending that to customer service staff and team leaders and so on. So of the data provided in the report, 96% of complaints were resolved through the Council's complaints process, and the Public Services Ombudsman for Wales intervened with 4% of complaints, which was a 6% decrease compared with the previous year. And some key points just to draw your attention to from the figures and the graphs provided. So with regards to compliments, there's been an increase overall. Corporate compliments have increased by 0.5%. Social services adult compliments shows a 66% increase since 2020 to 21. And social services compliments increased. We received none in 2020-21, where we received 13 in the past reporting period. Comments is an interesting factor as well that the complaints resolution team process. We've seen a significant increase of 37% of those being processed. So the team has processed over 4,000 comments for 2021-2022. And the team and myself are really interested in breaking down this data. We've recently introduced a function where the complaints team are recategorising the comments that come through the contact centre. So as I said, over 4,000 in 1 year. For 1 week in September, when we introduced the changes, we were able to convert 50 comments, and they were actually requests for service. So if we can work closely with the contact centre to get these categorised correctly at the outset, they'll go straight through to the service area, so increasing customer service really for the residents of Newport. And in fact, the levels of complaints that we receive are perhaps underreported and under-recorded. And this is, I think, is a trend across Wales, and certainly the Complaints Standards Authority have highlighted this and discussed this at length. So we anticipate that the figures of complaints are likely to increase as we will be really sort of drilling down on how we're categorising comments coming through the system. So just information regarding corporate. So the complaints department deal with corporate complaints and social services complaints. For corporate complaints, we saw a 3.6 increase in stage 1 complaints. And for stage 2 corporate complaints, where they're escalated to a more senior officer to investigate, we've seen a 20% reduction since 2020-21. With regard to social services, Stage 1 social services complaints increased by 36%, but social services Stage 2 complaints, which require an independent investigator to carry forward, we had a 50% reduction since the previous year. And that's me, thank you. So welcome any comments or questions.
Just, if I may, Chair, just to add a little extra to that as well. So we have had some conversations with the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales, and I think it's fair to say that there's no right and wrong answer to what constitutes a good or a bad sort of complaint figures, if you like. So they were erring on the side of logging more things as a complaint, so that feedback is recorded and dealt with properly. And we did actually contact our Public Services Ombudsman for Wales colleague, and he said if there's any context in relation to the Wales picture, then he's happy to pick up any of those things as well if we refer that to him. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And am I allowed to call you Bridie and Mark? Would that be okay, rather than Mrs. Edwards or Mr. Blizzard? So if I could, that would be very nice. Any questions? Don.
Just on page 22 of my minutes, where it's talking in terms of the contact centre staff, and it talks in terms of the service provider will be carrying out a large system upgrade shortly, which should resolve a lot of the issues for the residents of Newport. Has that actually been timetabled as to when that's actually going to happen?
Thank you for your question. I can certainly take that back and feed back to you. Yes, I'll speak with the contact centre.
Any other questions? Norma?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for that presentation. I think it was quite helpful because some further information came forward which answered one of my questions. I was looking for assurance in terms of lessons learned, because I don't think training is necessarily the answer, but I think you covered a number of the other things that were going on. It would have been helpful to have that in the paper, because, you know, it certainly answered one of my queries. But another thing that concerned me was, if I'm a complainant, how do I get feedback? You know, you'll say you resolved the complaint, but there are times when, you know, I could be raising something that's will require change in policy, perhaps, or things like that. Do you keep, you know, passing feedback back to complainants?
I think in terms of that continuous improvement of services, and am I on? Yeah. Right. In terms of that continuous improvement for services and getting that feedback going through, as I mentioned in what I said earlier about working closely with the Intelligence Hub going forward, we hope to be able to harness that information, implement those changes and support service areas, and feed that back. So whether that's through the website perhaps, or newsletters, updates, our Facebook pages.
Okay. One other question, Chair, if I may. I noticed Public Sector Ombudsman for Wales recommended giving customers various platforms for raising complaints. I'm not sure whether you covered that, but are we doing that? And is our system very accessible?
We are accessible, yes. We have a section on the internet for customers to access. They can contact us via telephone. They can, I believe, drop in to the riverfront or the civic centre. Those mechanisms are there, but yeah, we're always looking to kind of broaden our accessibility, certainly. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Horton.
Thank you, Chair. On page 12 or 26, depending on which way you're looking at it, your actions, could we have some sort of clarity around where you are with those actions? Just some clarity on where we are with the actions, because obviously some of them it says December 22, but are we on target to achieve December 22, and where they've got ongoing? What sort of state are we with those?
I would say broadly, we may be a month or so, either way kind of thing, but broadly, I think it's fair to say, and it's to be open to the committee that, there's quite a bit of change going on, and we are trying, we've got a service moving into a new service area, we've got, some relatively new members of staff and so forth. And I think, as you would hopefully appreciate, we're trying to do things properly. So things might slip slightly, but, broadly they're on track for what we're planning.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Cox? Could you put your... Thank you.
There were two, hopefully, very quick questions, and then I just wanted to make a comment, please. That...
Can I just say, Councillor Cox, you can make comments after questions?
Yeah, I'm going to give you. The questions are coming up now. Hopefully they're straightforward. I was puzzled by one graph that showed social services complaints, and everybody seemed happy as Larry for the first 3 quarters. There was absolutely nothing, and then everything appeared in 1 month. I didn't. Was that accurate, or was
I'd struggle to tell you a kind of specific response to that in terms of trend and so forth.
It's on page 19, actually.
Yeah.
That there was nothing for 3 quarters. Then all the complaints came in 1 quarter, which I can't imagine how that would happen.
I'm not familiar with kind of the reasons behind that. I think that's one of the things we're trying to get to grips with is a bit more of an insight, if you like. I suppose these things, can be a particular event that has caused something to happen, and obviously people to be unhappy. But I guess
the other
it's difficult to predict.
It was about a phrase I didn't understand. It was on page 26. It stated that there were too many options to close off complaints, and I didn't quite know what that referred to.
Okay, I'll take that one. Where we use My Council Services, a software database to capture all of our complaints, comments and compliments data, those are logged on My Council Services. It's a technical system, really, I suppose, where we are closing down complaints for different reasons. So whether it's a stage 1 resolved, stage 1 unresolved, stage 1 taken to stage 2. So we've got a number of different choices, and when we come to analyse that data and cleanse data, it becomes quite challenging because there are too many options. So we're trying to ensure that we have the correct amount and the correct closing categories for reporting reasons. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Thank you.
And then, can I make a comment, please, Chair? Oh, yeah, of course. Okay. Right. Okay.
I've got a series of questions, unfortunately, and I don't wish to put you in a very difficult position, and you may not know the answer, but I'll just raise these questions. I've got about 10 questions, but there we are. First one is councillor complaints. So councillor goes out into his ward, gets a batch of complaints off his residents. Are they recorded anywhere on the system?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Secondly, do you know how many comments become complaints?
We will do when we start breaking down the data.
So the answer is no.
No.
Right, that's okay. Thank you. But because obviously comments will become complaints at some stage, if we can address them very early on in comments, and you could improve service delivery or something. That's okay.
Absolutely,
thank you very much.
Yeah.
What is the customer satisfaction in dealing with complaints? What's their sort of overall satisfaction in you dealing with complaints? Do you record that information?
I think that's certainly something that we can look at implementing, yes, and I do believe that there was a survey that was carried out by my predecessor, but I don't have that data with me, but yeah, that's something we would look at. Okay,
because again, it goes on, I think the figure you said was 96% resolved, but the corporate complaints on page 20, it says stage 1 complaint 271, stage 2 31, so therefore if they've gone on to stage 2, it's 11.44%, so therefore I'm just wondering whether it's actually 88% it's resolved, but I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but that's my reading of the figures. And again, it's the same point really. Do complainants get any written feedback? Because in my experience, if you don't respond and tell them what the result of their complaint is, they don't necessarily complain again because they just say, well, it's a waste of time, it goes into the ether. So I'm just wondering whether every complaint you get, do you respond and say, this is what we've done, or we can't do this, or whatever?
Each complaint that comes through to the complaints officers is acknowledged and responded to, yes. With regards to comments, this is, I think, where we have an area of improvement, of distinguishing between a compliment, a comment, request for service, or just general feedback.
Okay, so just clarify that then. So I make a complaint, I get it acknowledged, it takes 4 weeks to resolve. Does that complainant get a letter?
Yes.
Or a thing? Thank you. Lovely, thank you. Are complainants provided with a customer satisfaction questionnaire to evidence their rate of satisfaction of dealing with a complaint?
Not currently, but they have been in the past, and we'd look to do that again in a timely.
Because again, that could be a learning exercise.
Absolutely.
Good. What learning is taken from complaints, and have directorates action service delivery amendments or whatever? Or can't you answer that?
I can. I think I mentioned that earlier. Bear with me a second.
I think, sorry, I'll let Bridie articulate a little bit more in a moment, but I think probably where we're somewhat lacking at the moment is probably that kind of intelligence in terms of the bigger picture of complaint. In terms of individual complaints, and to a certain extent trends, I think we do some of that, but I think in terms of understanding the issues in services broadly, I think that's probably where we need to improve.
No, that's okay. I think this is a learning exercise for us. You were new in post, new head of service. I think it's just a learning exercise, really, just to try and improve the system for me.
Definitely.
Did you want to say anything else, Bridie?
No, I think
no,
Mark
okay.
Thank you.
You raised the unacceptable action policy. Does the council have a vexatious complainants policy, and have you excluded anyone from using any of those policies in regards to, you know, a malicious complainant or a complainant who raises the same issue time and time and time again?
Yes, we do. We do have an acceptable actions by customer policy, but I think I'd like to work closely with service areas, as there are a number of service areas that have frontline contact with customers who might present with, as I mentioned earlier, sort of challenging behaviour, persistent contact. So I think it's a fine balance between service areas responding and reminding customers of the conduct, and then I think obviously the complaints department, their involvement then with implementing any restrictions. But I think it needs to be balanced between service areas and also complaints. Yeah.
No, that's it. And again, the issue for me is making sure that complainants are aware of the policies, so that you don't get them time and time again. The Public Ombudsman of Wales annual letter, it's mentioned, I think, as a background paper in this. Is there an opportunity at the next report just to attach it? Because, again, it's got a lot more information than you've extracted here. So
yes,
rather than us trying to find it.
Absolutely, and that, in hindsight, that's what we should have done.
No,
Apologies.
that's okay. No worries. And just look at me. Finally, it's the point Councillor Horton made in regards to the actions for improvement. And I know what you said, Mark, in regards to it. I'm just wondering whether we could have an update report in 6 months' time as to what's happened in regards to these actions, so that members of the committee can be assured, you're both new in post, that there is progress being made and there's some learning from this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's your prerogative, and we're got no issues with that at all. Absolutely.
Lovely. Thank you. That's my end of my questioning. Comments? Councillor Cox.
Two comments. One, very briefly, is that when I've been involved in dealing with complaint systems before, and there's one particular role I was in where I had to deal with them quite a lot, that it was my experience, and obviously the authority were doing a lot of work on complaints, and it's very pleasing to see that, because it's very important for public perception and the reputation of the council, etc. And there's a lot of work being done. But I always found it much easier to analyse the stats and say how many complaints we'd had and how many got resolved, etc., etc. What I think was also just as important in monitoring complaints was actually looking at the quality of complaints. I mean, some people are quite adept actually at dealing with the complaint, writing a couple of sentences with an answer to it and sending that off, and then it's done. I'm not, of course, suggesting that's happening, but I have seen, you know, that it's easy to deal with the complaint and tick it off. But so I suppose I'd be interested in any comments actually on the actions that are listed here in terms of to what extent that there's a monitoring of quality as well as of statistics. Because as a local councillor, that I think that that comes over quite strongly, I think, where it's not just the fact that people have got an answer from the council, but they feel that it's been dealt with in a proper way and that the response is of sufficient quality so that they get that confidence. The other point I wanted to make was about page 29, please, that it does say in the minutes that, and this is an issue I've raised before, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to apologise for raising it again, which is about equality and equality, that it did say in the minutes, actually, that when I've asked previously about monitoring data on equalities, which is a statutory responsibility, that the data is there, but it's elsewhere. And I appreciate these reports are long enough, and we don't... to put a lot of monitoring data in there is obviously going to make them even longer. I appreciate that. But it was agreed, according to the minutes, that what would be put on the reports is not the data, but where, you know, if, for example, I wanted to find out, look at the monitoring data, it would be indicated in the report where I could find it, because I am assured whenever I raise this issue that the council does lots and lots of monitoring and the data is there. If you know where to look for it. And that's not happened here, certainly, though it was agreed in the minutes. And if I could, I just make one other comment, that I'm still rather puzzled by the fact that it says here once again in a report that this is a report for information only. And presumably it's for our information, so we can satisfy ourselves in our role of making judgments on the good governance of the local authority. So that monitoring is a purpose. And it would seem to me complaints is an area that seems to stand out where monitoring is absolutely crucial. I mean, you know, for example, do young people take advantage of complaint system? In my experience, they tend not to, actually. It tends to be a group that's left out. Do ethnic minority groups, are they proportionately represented in sampling of complaints? You know, is it the case? I'm not saying it is, obviously, but, you know, is it the case? I don't actually know whether, you know, 80% of the complaints come from white middle-aged males over 50. I don't know. And I would be, you know, as a councillor, I would like to know that. And but once again, I'm not told where I can find that kind of data.
Thanks, Councillor Cox. I think just as comment, given you were quite right about the equalities, clearly the two people before us today, it's a new report, a new agenda. Maybe it's not cascaded down at the moment to the departments. I do see Councillor is up there. So I think it may be just to be picked up or re-emphasised that corporate management team or whatever it is, so that it's re-emphasised as to ensure that data is available, Councillor Cox, because I think that is important.
I think one of the issues is the fairness and equality's impact assessment specifically is where there's a decision to be made. So the wording on the report is right. That's not a statutory necessary thing. I think it does say in the report that the figures are covered in the strategic equalities report, but we could also, of course, put a little bit more data in there about equalities, which I think is the point you're making. But
I mean,
the FDIA specifically is the decision.
No,
that's the issue.
I'm sorry. No, I take that on board, but the strategic, it's what it says, isn't it? It's a strategic paper, and it doesn't necessarily include all the stats that have led to conclusions, as far as I'm aware.
Okay. Clearly, you can take on the comments, and it will be picked up in the minutes anyway, so hopefully next time some of the reports come, I've got the right information. I do apologise. Councillor Batteruni, is it? Is that correct?
I've heard worse, Chairman.
Oh, thank you very much. I do apologise if I've got it wrong.
No, don't apologise at all. I just wanted to make a general comment on all the very good questions councillors and yourself have raised. Is that strategic quality piece about the data and actually what it tells us? And I think it speaks to Councillor Cox's point and Councillor Horton's point about improvement and your points within your 10 questions about what is it actually telling us, the deep underlying message, and that's what we don't know. And so we're going to link that to the intelligence unit, which is the key plinth by which we're going to improve and understand the underlying trends. Because I'm the cabinet member, so I'm very much asking the similar questions. And I want to know, we're going to treat complaints like a resource. What are complaints telling us about those services? And then what can we do to improve those services and provide brilliant feedback to our residents, which is what they deserve. And the key to that is understanding the trends and also making sure the data is accurate. And so I think the officer mentioned about compliments being not treated as complaints yet. We need to sort that out. We need to include that in our complaints, and then we need to understand what are they telling us, what's the overall message, as Councillor Cox says, what's the strategic message. And once we know the data is good and it's in the intelligence unit, then we can link it to the wider piece around equalities and be sure on what we're saying and who's saying it and on what. Because I think my overriding message that I'm hearing from the committee is that's what they want to know, and that's what we are seeking to deliver for you over the coming months.
Thank you for those comments. Are there any other comments? It's not an information report. We've got a recommendation, Councillor Cox. The recommendation is that we're asked to consider the contents of the report regarding the process and performance of the Council's Corporate Comments and Complaints Annual Report 2021 and make any recommendations for improvement to the annual report. I think hopefully that's been captured by the... Thank you. So people prepared to move that we've noted the contents and that the report be amended or recommended, amended in accordance with the comments made by the committee. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, thank you, Don. Seconded. Councillor Cox. Can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you for turning up. If you'd like to go, you can, I'm sure, but you can stay if you're interested. Next item on the agenda is the Q1 22-23 Corporate Risk Register update.
Sorry, Chair, there's a hand up.
Oh, sorry, Andrew.
Sorry, Chair, just before you go on to the next agenda item, can I just clarify with our Democratic colleagues that all members with attending through the hybrid system should have their cameras on?
Oh, right, thank you.
Thanks. And if you could just remind them to do that, Chair, that would be great.
Oh, hang on, here we go. Sorry. Can we just get some corporate, for the next meeting, what the policy is?
Sorry, through the Chair, just to clarify that sometimes there are some bandwidth issues when people are joining, so we suggest, and it is in the preamble at the beginning, that they turn their cameras and their mics off, but they turn them on when they are speaking. Okay? Thanks.
Can we get some corporate steer on that? Because I should imagine that if this is being broadcast or it's going to go on the website, then people need to know who's here, and because actually they could be somewhere else. Would you take that back?
Yeah, happy to take that back. But as Anne said, it is in the preamble to the meeting, so it is as Anne said.
That's okay. But as long as we're acting correctly in accordance with your constitution, that's the main thing. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Q1 22-23 corporate risk register update.
That's me, please, Chair. So, Janice Dent, Policy and Partnership Manager. With me today is Paul Flint, who's the Performance and Research Business Partner.
Can I just cut you off a minute? Sorry. This thing. Is it possible to have the names on the officers' boards? Because I've got the names of the councillors, which is great, but I don't have the names of the independent members who I know. That's okay. But I don't know all the officers who are necessarily here. So if you could put your name on it next time, would that be okay?
Of course, Chair.
That's very kind. Thank you.
That's okay, Chair, no problem. So yes, Paul Flint, who's the Performance and Research Business Partner and kind of looks after performance and risk for us as part of the service area. And our Head of Service is here as well, Tracy McKim, and our Director, Rhys Cornwall, is also here. So as with the previous report, this proposal for the committee is to consider the contents of this report and to assess the risk management arrangements for the authority and to provide any additional commentary and or recommendations for us to take forward and to take to Cabinet. So this is Q1, so it was from April to the end of June 2022, and it is about the ability to be able to monitor the risks that prevent us as a council from achieving our objectives within our corporate plan or to deliver the services in our communities and to service users across Newport. We had 16 risks recorded at the end of Q1, and for them to be in the corporate risk register, they're said to have a significant impact on the achievement of our objectives to be able to deliver. So those are within the report, and Paul's going to talk through in more detail. But just as a summary, there were 8 severe risks that we were concerned about during the quarter and working towards mitigating. There were 8 major risks, and all of those are outlined in the report. And also during the quarter, no new or escalated risks, which was kind of positive news. One risk increased in the risk score, and that was in relation to the MTFP, which we can kind of talk about a little bit more throughout the report. And one was reduced, slightly reduced, which was the COVID risk throughout the report. The 14 other risks kind of remained the same and then were escalated or de-escalated during the quarter. So we do review, the corporate management team review these every quarter alongside Cabinet and obviously this committee, and it's likely to change this year due to the new corporate plan that we're currently working towards at the moment. So this report is for Q1 is against our current corporate plan, which ends this year. So over to Paul just to talk members through a bit more.
Thank you. So just to kind of briefly highlight, following on from what Jan said, at the end of Q1 in total we had 44 risks across the organisation. There's a full table which details all of those risks and the numbers there. There is a consideration in terms of we do have another 3 new service areas. So obviously you will see in that table that there are some service areas which are still going through their service planning process and understanding and identifying the risks that affect them in terms of their delivery. And yeah, we're happy to take any questions from the Governance and Audit Committee.
Any questions? Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, it's just a bit of an observation, actually. On page 38, you've got R7, cyber security. I can't see it in the box from you've got in the 2 boxes on the red. You've got an R8 in a red and an R8 in an orange. So which is which?
Thank you, Councillor. That's noted, and that's an error which on our part.
Which is which? So is cyber security in the orange or in the red?
It's in the red, Councillor.
Thank you for that, Councillor Jordan. Norma?
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid on the risk register I have a number of points to make, which I hope some of which will be helpful. Reading the risk register, I should remind myself this referred to the 30th of June and not the 30th of September. But I did wonder, when I was looking at where you were with some of the risks, whether the target date for completion needed to be looked at and possibly amended. And in some cases, when I looked at the commentary and I tried to relate it to the mitigating action, it didn't quite link. And, so the question came up in my mind was whether the action was appropriate. I would think it was in most cases. But then I was thinking, are the officers really focused on achieving the outcome that action should lead to? So I think there's a need to look at the narrative there. Because I was looking at it, I think, well, that actually doesn't say an assessment to be completed by so-and-so. There's words there, but it's not actually focused on what the action is. And there were no mitigating actions for some risks, which was of concern: educational out-of-area placements and high-risk network. No commentary on balancing the council's budget. City security, coordinated evacuation arrangements. Nothing appears to have been done, and the completion date was the 31st of March, 2022. Sorry, I haven't finished. Climate change. I was a bit taken aback to find the Ebervale solar farm development, that this has been held up because of the local electricity network, and I thought, well, surely that should have been sorted out before planning or during planning. And the last point I want to make is the pressure on adult and community services. The narrative there, I was just asking myself the question, how is this stopping the assessment of the impact, which was the action, which takes me back to the first point I made. So sorry, I put a lot of stuff on you for that.
No, thank you very much for your comments there, member. Just to kind of give you a little bit of an overview in terms of some of those risks and the commentary that's supporting those. I'm going to try and address one by one, but I try to give it under a broad overview. As you understand, we're going through this big process of reviewing all of the risks at the moment. So as part of that process, we are looking at the actions as well, and the actions that are supporting those risks as well. So we are going through this kind of detailed process and looking at that at the moment. It is correct in terms of the high-risk network risk not having any actions against that at the moment. That is mainly due to the fact of that, we are lobbying, and we, as we explained in the previous training to you, the high-risk network risk, there's some of that risk which we are having to accept as an organisation with some of part of that. And you'll see in the report as well that there's already existing controls in place which are managing that particular risk and overseeing it as well. So, so some of that information is already detailed there in terms of what is in existence and what is being done in relation to those risks. In terms of the actions, and you mentioned about the risks, and did you say risks ending? Did you mention something about risks ending, or?
I mentioned that you perhaps need to be looking at the target date, because if I looked at where you were in relation to completion, I thought that's not going to happen by the target date.
Yeah, so in terms of the actions as well, it's just to kind of clarify that we are reviewing this as we speak. So it is just a case of making sure that officers understand the completion dates and the target dates, and we're just making sure that those are correct. So we are reviewing those for each of those risks at the current time as part of this big service plan process, and looking at all of the risks which are currently in the corporate risk register as well. So,
can I clarify that?
Yeah, cool.
So I think the issue is that officers probably understand on the ground in what they're doing, but it's not reflected on the system. That's what you mean, isn't it? Because we hadn't previously fully utilised the actions bit of the system. So in some of these cases, I suspect the information is there, but we are not seeing it recorded in the correct way within the system.
I understand that, and I understand it's work in progress, and I understand the difficulty when you're collating stuff from various service areas and you're not getting the information in the form you should have. But I think, as the Governance and Audit Committee, I think it's really important that we're really clear about the action, the deadline, and what has been done. And, you know, that narrative, in terms of your commentary, links back to the action, because it doesn't always in what I read. Because I think that then gives us the assurance, you know, yep, that's a correct action, there's a good timetable for it, and actually they're well on the way. And I think that's what we're looking for. Okay,
we'll
thank
take
you.
those comments on board.
Okay,
we'll
thanks.
work
Thanks
on
very
that.
much.
Thank you, Councillor.
Any other questions? Any comments? No. Sorry, the only comment I would make is clearly you will pick up what Norma has said, because I think the thing I'm learning is, even at last meeting, you're at the end of this process. So this is fed through, as we've discussed, the hierarchy of wherever. But I think it's essential that the message is got out now through your future training and that you know, if the narrative is not right, or the actions are not appropriate, or the deadlines are not set, then the likelihood is that Audit and Governance Committee may look a little bit deeper into what's happening, because we can't let this continue on and on, because Norma raised it last meeting. So we understand, obviously, from the training there's a new performance management, risk management is coming in, but I think that message just needs, it reiterates again where we're at. If that's okay. Sorry.
Chair, just to kind of support that fact, I guess, so the new risk management is going to be worked on, and obviously that comes with quite a lot of training and messages for all of our officers. So hopefully that, well, not hopefully, but that will have an impact in how we can kind of support those officers to be able to meet the requirements of the committee and to be able to give you that assurance. So yeah, that all of that process is starting, but it may take kind of a couple of months to get to where we would like it to be.
Okay. But rest assured, people are keeping a weathered eye on the committee on it. So,
yes, definitely, Chair.
That's great. Okay, if there are no other comments... Oh, Councillor Cox. Is this a question or a comment? Can you put your microphone on? Councillor Cox. Councillor Cox. Microphone, please. Thank you.
Sorry. I'm looking at page 39, which is social services. That I suppose my comment is really, well, I think there's a number of facets to it. That the basic issue that obviously is of concern is that for two aspects of social services, that we every quarter it's reported that the risk is at the sort of maximum at the top of the local authorities scale. It can't be any higher, which basically means, presumably, that well, I'd be interested to know what it does mean. I mean, it means the service can no longer function, maybe. I mean, the principle of this process is that that where there is a risk, it's identified, that mitigating measures are then identified and taken, and then presumably the hope is that something changes and the risk reduces. But of course, with social services, the mitigating measures are clearly having no effect, because well, that may be a little unfair, no effect, but are not having the effect that we desire, which is to bring the score down from 25. And I understand why that is. It's not the council's fault. I mean, it's probably because what needs doing to address that lies outside the council's power, with, you know, for example, the inability of the council to recruit staff, well, right across the UK, the inadequate levels of funding for social services across the UK. But I almost feel it's not quite adequate, actually, for us to keep coming back here. If we're to make a judgment on the delivery of the council services, to come back meeting after meeting and see a service in such a desperate state and just go through this process, which clearly doesn't seem to make any difference in terms of the service that's being delivered. I don't know what the authority could do beyond following this process. But I almost feel that we get to a stage with something like this where there needs to be something beyond that. I don't know, and the government would probably be setting up the Cobra Committee or something. Maybe we need an equivalent on the council.
Rhys, do you want to deal with that? It is a comment, but I'll allow you to...
Yeah, no, it's a worthwhile comment. I suppose just a general sort of, just a general statement really around, obviously, it is... What you're looking at as a committee is have we got the appropriate processes in place, and have you got assurance around that? So actually, where we haven't quite got it right, that's absolutely right to pick up. I think that particular one, I reference to the training session we previously had, which obviously wasn't a public session, just so for people watching this. This represents the real sharp end of risk the organisation is dealing with, and what I would suggest to you is, there's not a local authority in England and Wales who probably hasn't got stability of social care providers and adult social care at the top of the risk register. So I would assure you, and I know Mary's on watching, that a significant effort on a daily basis goes into managing and mitigating those risks for individuals. Because we're not just talking about organisational risk here, we're talking about risks for individuals who are in receipt of social care. So a huge amount of effort goes in there, but there is no magic bullet. And I think those might be two of the risks, that if this went up to 30 or 35 on the risk register, they would probably be at that level as well. So you're absolutely right to raise it. And, I think, and again, going back to the previous conversation, Chair, about things, it's probably worth us, whilst it's not the remit of the committee, it's probably worth us linking in within, just for information for you, some of the scrutiny papers that go through, which are actually what the services are actually doing on a day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year basis to manage these risks as well as performance, just so you've got a bit of context about what else is going on.
I mean, that is, thank you for that. That is something that crossed my mind, if it's what I think you're talking about. That I know we've had a debate here and again at previous meetings about one of our responsibilities is clearly laid down by statute. It's not only to look at the risk facing the council and make a judgment on that, but to actually then make some judgment on the measures that have been taken to mitigate those risks. And I don't feel we've necessarily found a really adequate way of doing that yet, and I'm not sure what that is, because we don't want these reports any longer than they are, I don't think. And maybe sometimes taking a snapshot and going in, digging in some depth to look at what's happening, just dipping in occasionally in different areas might be a way of getting us to understand how the council does manage some of these issues. And I don't know if that's what you were suggesting, that we look at something like that.
I wasn't necessarily suggesting that, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. But I'm just thinking from a committee's point of view, you want assurance that we've got the mechanisms and processes in place. And actually, we need. Obviously, it's a new committee. It's got new arrangements because of the Local Government Elections Act. We are working our way through what that looks and feels like. And that, Chair, that might be something you might want to choose to do in a future meeting, just as a trial to see if we could do a bit of a deep dive on one of these risks to see actually what is.
I'm not looking to create lots of extra work for officers, but if it was just done occasionally, I think it would give us a sense of.
I don't know, Paul, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's just to say, just to assure the councillor about those two particular risks, is that I am meeting the Director of Social Services and the Heads of Service to look at those particular risks and to reassess them, and just to make sure that we're capturing the right information on those particular risks going forward as well. So we are, those particular risks in particular on the social services side, we are going to be taking a good look at those as well going forward.
Thank you for that. I was going to suggest, similar to what suggested Rhys, is that given we require that assurance, it's a similar thing to what Norma was indicating, is that clearly, whilst we need the assurance, it's not the right place here. It needs to be going to scrutiny, or it need to go to the Cabinet, it needs to go to the Council to make a decision on these big issues, not for us to make the big issues. But if they are being addressed by scrutiny, or they are being addressed by the relevant Cabinet or wherever, is just a short synopsis of the reports going up, so we can be assured that the assurances are being taken by Cabinet or the Scrutiny Committee reporting into Cabinet. And then obviously Councillor Cox, through other places, you can have a discussion somewhere else. But I think it's the assurance we require, as you said, Rhys, and I think just not war and peace, but a very short report to us to say, this is what's happening, similar to the actions, and then hopefully we can get that assurance. Because as you said, we've had the training. You've got to balance this amongst everything else the Council's delivering as well. So, good comment, Councillor Cox. Thank you for that. Is there anything else? Any other comments? Okay, the recommendation again is that we are asked to consider the contents of the report, which we've done. We've considered the report, assess the risk management arrangements for the authority, providing any additional commentary or recommendations to Cabinet. So I'm sure Democratic Services will pick that up and put it in the right format so it can be referred to the Cabinet. Some very pertinent points there. Can I have someone move, please? Councillor Jordan, can I have a second? Norma, thank you. Can I have a show of hands, please? All in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Then we're on to item 6, which is the internal audit progress against audit plan 22-23.
Thank you, Chair.
Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. This is one of the regular reports I'll be bringing into Governance and Audit Committee, and this is about the progress against the audit plan 22-23, quarter 1, so as at the end of June 2022. And in terms of the expectations of members of committee, it's to comment on and to note the information that's included within the report. The report is twofold. It relates to the performance of the team for the first 3 months of the year, and also goes into the opinions which we've issued at that time, to give you as members assurance or otherwise on the adequacy of the internal control environment operated within the Council. So just as a bit of background, we've got an establishment of 8 staff, 6 currently working in the team, and we've engaged with an external provider to help us support the reduced resources we have in the team. I'm shared on a 50-50 basis with Monmouthshire, and that relationship continues. But we do need to work within the public sector internal audit standards, which is UK-wide, and we have a 5-year review process, external review process with our peers within the Chief Auditors Group within Wales, and that's due to be undertaken for 2023. I'll be reporting back into committee in relation to that. So in terms of the audit plan, as agreed by committee, it's based on 1,073 days and 62 opinion-related jobs. This information today, I'm reporting on quarter 1. In terms of the performance of the team, that's set out in paragraph 13, where we've achieved 19% of the plan against a target of 10% for quarter 1, issuing draft reports within 2 days against a target of 10 days, and issuing final reports within 2 days against a target of 5 days. And more information is set out in the appendix, which I'll come to in a moment, Chair. I mentioned that we've covering the vacancies with external provision at the moment, but we do have an audit manager vacancy, which is being covered by Jan, who's sitting next to me today. He's the principal auditor, but acting up as audit manager, and we're using the external provider to cover for Jan's position. Hopefully to give you some assurance, Chair, that we are on track to meet the plan by the year end, albeit we're only in quarter 1, but we're ahead of the target. There will inevitably be some overruns during the work that we undertake. We come across some issues. It's never an exact science in terms of auditing. So the days we include for each individual job is based on our professional knowledge. But if we come across any issues or any things that need further investigation, obviously that will take longer time. To try and support the good governance and good financial management and stewardship throughout the organisation, We do provide financial training across the board, and in Q1 we provided 3 training sessions on compliance with our financial regulations, contract standing orders. Moving on to the opinions, where hopefully we can give you some assurance that the controls in place are appropriate. We've issued 17 jobs to draft report stage, and 6 of those warranted an audit opinion. 1 was good, 4 were reasonable, 1 was unsatisfactory, no unsound opinions issued in Q1. Again, further detail in the appendix, Chair, which I'll come on to in a moment. And just for committee's information, and this will be in relation to the second report I'll be bringing this evening, but where we have an unsatisfactory or unsound audit opinion, we will endeavour to follow that up within a 12-month period and then report back into Audit Committee on a 6-monthly basis. The 6-monthly report will be reported to you later this evening. If I could move members to the appendix, Chair, Appendix A, which is on page 88 of your pack. That sets out 2 tables, a comparison on a quarter-by-quarter basis for 21-22 against 22-23. If you compare where we are in terms of completion of the audit plan, it's there or thereabouts where we were last year. And also issuing of the draft report is slightly better. Issuing of final report, better again. Moving on to Appendix B, as I said, in Q1 we've issued 1 good opinion, 4 reasonable, 1 unsatisfactory, and we've also been involved with grant claims and issued 1 unqualified grant claim. The detail of the reports which we've issued are set out in the table on appendix, split into good, reasonable, unsatisfactory and qualified headings. Appendix C sets out some of the financial advice and non-audit opinion which we've issued, including the annual governance statement which has been brought before this committee previously. Appendix D shows the opinions and the definitions which we use in each individual audit report, including the unqualified and qualified definitions which we use on the grant claims which we're involved in auditing. So that's a very quick overview of Q1's performance and insurance, and I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions? Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just one question. On page 89 on the internal audit, the transport there, it says the follow-up 21-22. Was that from Q4 that you got an unsatisfactory, or was it that, say, going back to Q1 as an unsatisfactory? And if so, how come if that's the case, is it a year down the line and they're still unsatisfactory?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, fair question. That is in relation to work which we started in 21-22, and we issued an unsatisfactory opinion. Therefore, we followed it up in 22-23, Q1, issued a draft, and it's second unsatisfactory. And that will be picked up in the second report I'll be bringing to you this evening.
Thank you. Norma?
2 questions. First of all, I noticed positive feedback, which I think is very good. I just wondered whether there'd been any negative feedback to balance that out. And the second question is about the take-up of training on financial regulations and contract standing orders. I notice it's self-nomination, and bearing in mind the importance of internal controls and the responsibility of managers at all levels in terms of operating with those internal controls, why isn't it compulsory?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the first question, right, just give me a sec. Thanks. At the end of our audits, we issue a final audit report is issued to the head of service, and then we send out an audit evaluation questionnaire to the service manager. We collate all that response. One of the questions we ask is, are you satisfied with the audit? That's what we collate. But we encourage all commentary as well. So good and bad. And then that comes through to me, and we make an assessment as to whether we need to improve our audit provision across the board. If there are some negative indications, then I'll ring the manager and speak to them and see if they want to make any further comment, which I've done recently. They were quite happy with the not making a comment, but saying yes, they agree that they were they were partially comfortable with the way that the report was written, but not prepared to write anything or speak to me about anything else. So we do try and take on board any constructive criticism to make sure we improve the services. We don't get 100% returns, but we do encourage the service managers to return to us with the audit questionnaires. So in terms of the financial regs training, it is mandatory. We think that it's in the policy.
Yeah, it's in the HR.
Yeah, it's in the HR corporate training policy as mandatory. So over a period of time, everybody should attend. Unfortunately, they don't. So we encourage people to attend. We speak to service managers to make sure that they get their staff to attend. We've had heads of service attend in the past, which is good because obviously that sets an example. And where we might have an area of poor reporting or unfavourable reporting over the years, then we've concentrated the training and we've done specific sessions for managers in those areas to make sure that they're up to speed with the current financial regs and contract standing orders.
Chair, I think my concern there is with the word self-nomination, because that doesn't imply mandatory to me. And you know, from the answer, I'm not quite sure everyone that should be doing that training is doing it. And I think it's really important. It's like the health and safety training, compulsory, you've got to do it. So, you know, there may be an area we should be looking at there.
I think that's a fair point, Chair, and I'll pick that up with our HR colleagues.
I was going to reiterate that with what Norma said. I think if you've got unsatisfactory or sound and heads of service or team managers, supervisors or whatever decide that they don't want to turn up, I think we need to know about that because, again, I think it's so important. It shows a cultural thing in some respects. Well, you know, why worry about it? You know, we're not going to, I don't say they would say that, but they may. And I think it's important that people get the message that this is being taken serious. And, you know, you've done a job through your audit. You've come up with an unsatisfactory. So, therefore, I think as a committee, we take it as serious as that as well. So, you know, I think we would endorse that through wherever you want to go, or even, you know, to the corporate management team, just to say, can you ensure that your officers attend the training so that they're fully updated?
Yeah, we'll do, Chair.
Okay. Any other questions? I've got a couple of questions, Andrew. In paragraph 27, you've got the unsound or satisfactories. They're followed up within a 12-month timescale. If they're very important for us as a governance and audit committee, would you have the capacity to look at those sooner rather than later? So, you know, given a department or a team of people, you know, 3 months or 6 months to remedy it, you know, that you could then go in to just check it, because, you know, 12 months is a long time, and I understand your capacity issues and programme, but if it really affects the citizens of the county borough, you know, surely we need to take some ownership of that and make sure that what is needing to be resolved is resolved.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Again, fair point. We will do it as quickly as we possibly can. We'll take on board those comments, obviously. Where we've done follow-ups in the past, we've relied on managers telling us that they've implemented certain of the recommendations or not. So the time lag is really with the service managers not implementing recommendations on a timely basis. And we could go back and do an audit within 3 months or 6 months, and we'll get the same result. So, I mean, that could emphasise the fact, and we could bring that report back into audit committee quicker. But I think in the past we've probably erred on the side of caution, given them a sufficient time to implement the action that they've agreed, for us to go in and do a worthwhile audit the second time round. But I totally take on board your points.
I hear what you say. I think the issue for me is if it's that important, they may say certain things to you, but I think for us as a committee, if it is that important and you did go in 6 months and it was unsatisfactory again, then I think that will be a matter then for those heads of service or managers to come to this committee and answer why they haven't delivered it in a timely manner. I will pick it up in the next report when we deal with it.
Okay, yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, the other issue which...
Sorry, Chair, just to add as well, that information will be reported into committee on a quarterly basis with my updates anyway, in terms of the number of unsatisfactory opinions which we've issued in that quarter. Yeah,
I'll deal with that later in the report, in the next report. The other one which you raised, which Councillor Jordan raised in regards to the PTU contract update, follow-up 21-22, it's not in your list in the next report for 21-22, it's actually in for 2019-20 with the report which was issued in October 19. That's what it says in the report. I shouldn't jump forward to a report, but that's the information you've given us in the next report on page 119. So I assume that this unsatisfactory is the 22-23 follow-up, and there was nothing undertaken in 21-22. Is that right?
I'm sure Jan and Donna will come in and give a more fuller answer. But we started the work in 1920. It straddled financial years.
Why does it say October 19 then? So did you want to deal with that?
Yeah, we started the work in 21-22, and hence that's why we've still got 21-22 on the audit title. But the follow-up, the report was issued in draft in the current year, so it is part of the 22-23 audit plan.
Okay, but presumably, as I said, it's down here as 2019-20?
That was the original audit.
Right, so that's the first one.
That's the first audit.
Right, that's okay.
Yeah. So we started the follow-up, the first follow-up in 21-22, and we issued the draft report in 22-23.
That's okay.
Sorry, Chair, you're talking about the second report, though?
No, I'm talking about it says
report.
You've got the follow-up 21-22, so that's this second unsatisfactory, I assume.
Yes,
the first one was October 19.
Yeah.
Is that right? Because that's what it says.
Yes, sorry, yeah, the first unsatisfactory. So this is the first follow-up of the unsatisfactory.
Okay. Is that all right, Andrew?
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any comments? Norma?
I just wanted to comment really on achievements to date. I think it was good to see all the reports done well within the timescale. I think that should be recorded.
Yeah. I was going to make the same comment. I was pleased to read paragraph 13, 19%, which is 9% above the original target, which is really good news. Issuing reports within 2 days rather than the 10. I think this is good reading, and I think you need to congratulate your teams and the individuals who do this, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other comments? No. The recommendation is to note the content, note the contents report. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Norma. Seconded, Councillor Jordan. All in favour? Thank you very much. Item 7 then is the Audit Wales fee consultation 23-24. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mogford. Sorry. I didn't see your hand. It went up late.
Can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
I was just voting.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind of you.
Thank you.
Audit Wales fee consultation. Myron, is that you?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Audit Wales opened a consultation in the middle of August on fee levels next year. This is the first audit committee since that consultation opened. They did extend the consultation period. Irrespective as to whether or not that has now stopped or not, we will still feed back your comments and our comments. There's been a significant change in their approach for 23-24. There is a general increase because their cost base is going up. That wouldn't surprise anybody at this stage. There's also some professional changes to the way that they carry out their audits, with the requirements to do more upfront work to assess risk, and that helps them to plan their audit. That requires a lot of upfront effort and a lot of efforts from senior level staff as well, because of the nature of that work. Those two issues together is resulting in this fee proposal increase, which is quite significant. 12 to 18% for the planning work, 5% for general cost increase. So they're proposing to then reduce, though, or a proposal to reduce the performance work that they do by getting some aspects of that work paid for by essentially Welsh Government and then their work there. If that was to be possible, we would anticipate one negating the other one. If that is not agreed and possible, then yes, we would be facing a reasonably significant increase in our audit fees next year. So my comment on that is that yes, we understand the general cost increase. I understand that. The professional standards that they now have to meet is something that they've got to do. So I get that. But is there an opportunity there? Is my question, because can we do something at the council to reduce the audit efforts required by being less risky, I suppose, and again, so therefore we can work with this new approach and to work with Audit Wales to see, is that opportunity there? So today, obviously, I can't comment on how possible that is, but that is how I propose that we would engage with this new approach that they would bring. So the report is asking for the Audit Committee's view and any comments on what they're proposing for next year, and we will feed that back in the formal consultation responses that we will do as soon as possible after this meeting. We've also got Gareth Lucy from Audit Wales, who's got his hand up, so he may want to just say a few words before we open questions, I think.
Gareth, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Marion, for that summary. Really useful summary of the position and the consultation that we've launched. Just in terms of the consultation itself, it has formally closed, but of course, if there were any further comments, then we gladly receive them. Ultimately, I think it's important that we get as many voices heard as part of this consultation as possible. Obviously this information has been shared, at the highest level across, all local authorities, health boards, all the audited bodies that we cover in Wales. The point that he raises there were fairly clearly set out. The big issue for us for next year is this introduction of this new auditing standard, ISA 315, or a revised version of ISA 315. The standard already exists, but it's a complete fundamental overhaul of this standard. There's a huge amount of uncertainty about how to actually implement the standard, and not just with us. We're talking about all audit organisations everywhere, effectively. And particularly in England, we know a lot of the private firms are really having to grapple with how to deliver local authority audits under this new framework. Marion's right, there are opportunities as well as issues caused by this. So there are chances and opportunities here for us to identify potential efficiencies as part of this work. And one of the reasons that you'll see that there's a range of fee increases provided is simply as a result of the uncertainty of this change and what it actually means. It could well be that as we work through this, the actual fee increase is far less than initially foreseen. And if that's the case, then that saving will pass its way through to the council. The actual fee that's charged is only the cost of delivering the audit. This is just an estimate at this stage of what we think it could be. So it's prudent for us to flag that up to all of our audited bodies, really. So ultimately, as Marion said, happy to take any questions or comments on board. And although the consultation is closed, we're happy to receive any further comments that anyone has.
Thank you for that, Gareth. Any questions?
If I could just ask the Head of Finance through you, Chair, had you intended to respond to the consultation? Are we still intending to respond?
So the answer is yes to that. The consultation started in end of August. This is the first meeting since that opened. So the timescales have been reasonably short, but the intention was always to gain your comments and to feed it back, irrespective if the formal deadlines have closed. Because I've been in touch with Gareth and his colleagues, and I know that they are still happy to receive feedback. This was the first meeting since the consultation opened.
I don't know about other members of the committee, Chair, but I think the difficulty for me is not knowing enough, really. I mean, I've read the consultation, and I understand all the rationale, and I followed what the Head of Finance was saying, and it all sounded very sensible to me. But it would be quite useful perhaps to see a draft of what you would propose.
So I'd be very happy to email that around to all of the committee members and then maybe give a pretty quick turnaround for any feedback, and if people are happy, that is what I will be sending back in. But it will be roughly along the lines of there's a general understanding to the general cost increases. We understand that the Audit Wales have to comply with the revised planning guidelines. We would support and hope that there will be a commensurate reduction in the performance audit to negate that. But if not, we would welcome the opportunity to use the different approach to look to see where efficiencies in the audits can be made in the future. So those will be the 5 or so feedback points, but I'll put them on email in writing tomorrow. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a quick one, what is the actual cost then for the increase of this? And if so, where is the money coming from? Is it coming from the capital savings or no?
So we now, my colleague Rob Green is on the phone. So if I get this very wrong, Rob, you can say we spend roughly 300,000 on our audit fees across both the financial statements, which is the majority of the cost, and on the performance work. Roughly 200,000 on kind of the accounts and about 100,000 on the performance work. So we'll see the auditing of the accounts bit increasing by anywhere between 15 and 20%, but then a third of the performance elements, the 100,000, not being charged to us in the future. They broadly match each other. If that wasn't to happen, then there would be an increase in the audit fees. That is a revenue cost, and therefore that would have to be absorbed and funded through the council's revenue budget. So that would be a pressure on the council's medium-term financial plan, which will come into place next year.
Horton.
Thank you, Chair. What sort of breakdown of the auditors do we make use of? So obviously there's quite a difference in the financial cost per role. What sort of level are we utilising? And if we're using a more expensive, or if we haven't used a more expensive auditor, like the audit manager or the lead auditor, can they be brought down a few levels so we could, if there's a cost saving that way?
I think those are the conversations that we'll be having in earnest in the future now, because obviously this different risk approach will require Audit Wales to be to plan the seniority of staff that they think that they need for the risks identified in this council's audit, and therefore that will give us that transparency and the opportunity to have that conversation.
So from what you just said, I'm guessing you challenge that back then if you're not happy with what they're doing.
Yes, we would. There would be a conversation about that. So yeah, as the audit manager confirmed, they'll be finding their way through this themselves next year. So we'll all be sort of learning the first time around, but we will engage and get better as we move on.
Questions, anyone?
Sorry, Chair, just one final one for that one. Will you be able to feed back to us then, please, where you have made a cost saving through doing that, through challenging back? So it evidences that you're doing what you say you're going to do, please.
Yeah, sure. So we can probably bring a report to this committee, I guess, annually on the audit fee and the background to it, including some of the key results of our conversations with Audit Wales, which has resulted in that at that time. So yeah, I'm happy to consider that as a potential way forward. We've got Gareth as well.
Yeah, Gareth.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And yeah, just to back up the comments from Myri on there, as you mentioned, we'll be feeling our way through this a little bit in the first year, but we'll obviously be keen to keep the committee informed in terms of how that's progressing. So, we'll be certainly keeping you regularly informed in terms of, if the effects on the fee and any significant, developments that occur throughout the year in relation to that. So, for example, if we were to discover that initial estimate of 12 to 18% was significantly higher than forecast, we would be letting you know that. So, yeah, we will be informing you throughout the year as that progresses.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Any comments? Oh, no, it's Gareth's hand. Any comments? I've got a couple of comments in regards to this issue. Marion, I understand clearly that your understanding is that even though the closing date is gone, the 16th of September, we can still put comments in and hopefully they'll be submitted to the Senedd or to wherever it's going to go. The only point I was going to comment I was going to make is that if there's a consultation document like this in the future and there is a cut-off date, and it was the 16th of September, is there an opportunity to call a special meeting of this committee so that we can consider it, so that we actually get it in on time? Because again, it's, if the date is the date, we just got to be mindful that, and I'm just asking for some consideration in the future. You may have had a short timetable, but, we don't need all our other colleagues here. Obviously, it most probably is a meeting with yourself, and Reece, and that's it. But I'm just wondering whether that could be sorted next time.
Noted. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Second issue is, whilst we can give our view here, is there a political view coming from the authority, or is that your view? Or is there a management team view in regards to this?
So this has come to this committee only at this point, and then it'll be supplemented by my views as well. I haven't shared this wider within the wider management team.
I'm just wondering whether it should actually go to the cabinet, because there may be a cabinet member responsible for your finance and that. And they may have a view in regards to this. I'm not sure. I don't know what the process is in this authority, but it seems very strange that we provide a view as a committee, but maybe the politicians of this authority may support the view, may not, but at least you get a consensus amongst the amongst us.
Yeah. So we generally don't take this to our cabinet, but it would be discussed with the cabinet member at the appropriate time. Yeah.
As long as they may have delegated authority to deal with it. So I'm happy with that. Second, the other thing is this document, or the Auditor General's document, will be submitted to the Senedd, presumably for their budgetary requirements or whatever. I think that's what it says in the report. If we are going to respond, clearly this is a new requirement for not only Audit Wales, but this authority to deal with, and there's a cost to that. So that cost is unfunded, I assume, to this authority through revenue support grant or whatever. And, as is normal with lots of pieces of legislation, no money comes with it. And I think a point needs to be made is you can't keep putting in place new pieces of legislation time again without any support for it. So I'm just wondering whether you can pick that up to say, look, another piece of legislation, I'm not being unkind to Gareth, but the issue is that, you know, we're being used as a pilot. We've got no, other authorities, other boards throughout England and Wales are, but we've got no control over that. So we're paying for the privilege, really, of being monitored newly, for which we got no over control, and we will pay for it, whether it's within the fee. If the fee goes up, then I assume we would have to pay an additional fee, and that. So I'm just a little bit concerned at that, and I think that needs to be made for Welsh Government. Again, new piece of legislation, no money. And secondly, is the value for money issue. You know, we can't go anywhere else.
Gareth wants to come in. I'll let Gareth come first. I suspect that he'll say what I was going to say, but go on. These are not Welsh Government specific things. ICE is a international standards.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so this isn't actually anything that the Welsh Government has brought in. These are international standards on auditing. So there's the standard setting board, which has brought in these standards, you know, applicable to effectively any body that is receiving an audit, where the audit firm complies with these regulations. So, yeah, this is something that the audit profession across the piece, public, private sector, is having to grapple with. In terms of how to set this up. So certainly not a Welsh Government initiative in that sense. But, you know, in terms of following on from your comments there, Chair, as well, we'll effectively work as closely as we can with management to ensure that this is as smooth as possible. We feel we have a good working relationship with management, and, we'd like to continue that. I think that's a good basis for us to introduce what is a fairly significant change, but we feel we'll start from a good position to be able to do that, and we'll keep that communication going closely as we go through as well. If there was any significant change to the fee level, that would be communicated at the earliest opportunity. But at this stage, this is our estimate of what the costs may be.
No, that's okay. Thank you for Gareth. But again, the same principle applies. If Welsh Government's aware of it, that it's a new requirement on us as local authorities to pay for it together with other bodies, then maybe Welsh Government can also make the same case to UK Government for funding. Whether that has any justification or not is another issue, whether you get any more money. But the reality, in some respects for me, is the more you pay the regulators and to do this statutory, the less money you got for service delivery. And money's going to be tough. So that's the only point, I did want to make. So obviously, any other comments? No. The recommendation is we note the proposals to the changes to fees, we note the likely contents, and you can get the bones, I'm sure, out of it for a response to Audit Wales, as soon as possible. If you can share that response, as Norma said. But I completely agree, we need a quick turnaround. People can't have it lingering on their machines for, lots of days. Someone prepared to move? Thank you, Councillor Horton. Someone prepared second? Thank you, Norma. Can I have show of hands, please? Thank you, Councillor Mogford. Picked you up this time, and the rest committee. That's carried. Thank you very much. Item 8 on the report, the agenda is the internal audit, progress against unfavourable audit opinions previously issued to March 2022. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. So this is another regular report I'll be bringing into committee. It's a 6-month update on, as you say, the progress against unfavourable audit opinions previously issued. And this is as at work we've undertaken as at 31st of March 2022. So it's in relation to the progress the service managers have made against the action plans which they've agreed when we've issued the final report. So when we do our audit, we identify strengths and weaknesses, we give a balanced review, and we assess the opinion based on the strengths and weaknesses in that particular audit we're undertaking. Obviously, the more weaknesses you have, the more likelihood you are to have an unfavourable audit opinion. We then set out an action plan with the service managers, and we get the managers to agree a management action to address the weakness which we've identified. We agree that, we put a deadline in place, and then we go back within a 12-month period to check to make sure that they've actually implemented those recommendations. Or those actions, sorry. So this report is an update on where we are in terms of the opinions which we've issued previously, which were unfavourable. Has the service manager addressed the issues, implemented the management action which they agreed to improve the overall control environment? And this is us reporting back into committee to tell you that. So as an overview, there's a summary there just to say over the last couple of years, the number of audit opinions we've actually issued and the number which were either unsatisfactory or unsound. You note that in the latter years, 2021 and 21-22, there's a lower number of unsatisfactory opinions, but there's no direct correlation because our audit plan changes every year. We don't audit the same things every year, and we don't audit the same service areas in particular every year. So it's just as a guide, really, in terms of that information. Expectations of the committee are to comment and note and endorse the report, but also to consider calling in any specific heads of service if you feel that you need further assurance in certain areas based on the opinions which we've issued within this report, where they might be unsatisfactory or unsound. But also in particular with this report is to consider calling in the service manager and head of service responsible for the adoption allowance audit which we undertook, based on the fact that it's a second unsatisfactory audit opinion. And I'll come on to the detail of that in a moment, Chair. So going back over the last couple of years, what I've tried to do is identify reports which we had categorised as unsatisfactory or unsound, and to give you an up-to-date progress as at 31st of March 22. So 15-16, we did a review of Newport North. We identified it as unsatisfactory. That one has been ongoing for a number of years, as you'll see, but we've recently had some further information which we feel we can move forward and improve the opinion on that one. We'll be reporting back next time, but primarily there were significant staffing issues in relation to the management of that particular arrangement with the council, which prevented us from doing any further audit work. In 16-17, we had a payment card industry data security standards unsatisfactory audit. We were dealing with our information governance colleagues who were here earlier this evening. They've engaged with an external provider and have confirmed that they are now compliant. So we just need to check that in quarter one. So we've checked that in quarter one, and they are compliant, but this obviously report dates 31st of March. For 17-18, we had trips and visits, which was originally unsatisfactory in 17-18, but there's further details to follow. I'll pick that up in the next table if I could, Chair. Outside preferred catering contract, unsatisfactory March 2018. We had to wait until the school entered into a further catering contract in that respect. And as far as we're aware at the moment, no school has entered into a subsequent contract. 18-19, we had the first review of adoption allowances, where we deemed that to be unsatisfactory. We did a follow-up, started in 2021, continued into 21-22, but there were significant delays due to staff availability in the service area. As at 30th September, it was ongoing, but we did finalise the report in December 21 and deemed it to be unsatisfactory. Is that right? Yeah. Therefore, it was a second consecutive unsatisfactory audit opinion. The head of service has been called into audit committee already, and we've done a further follow-up. We've done a further follow-up, and we identified that the opinion would have been a reasonable opinion, and that was a draft report. So there was an improvement in terms of the overall control environment. We've been trying to finalise that audit report, that draft audit report, with limited success. And the justification being that in that we haven't had a response is that they had issues with their staffing in terms of providing that particular service. So much so that the service just wasn't being provided for a period of time whilst we were trying to finalise the draft report. Hence, we've categorised it as an unsatisfactory final report because no work was being undertaken, not even an improved work. There's further information about that included in the appendix, which I'll come on to in a moment, and I'm sure Jan will give some further information about that. So in terms of the vehicle tracking system, it was unsatisfactory in 2019. We're due to follow it up in 2022-23. Again, staffing issues in the service area are preventing us from doing that. Also, during 2021, there was a significant impact on our audit plan with COVID and prevented us going out to service areas. In terms of trips and visits, we've had 2 unsatisfactories, and the head of service has been called into the formal audit committee. We've now followed that up in Q1 of 22-23, and it's looking more promising, looking more positive, and we'll report back that information in due course. Yeah. With clear and comprehensive, we deemed that to be unsatisfactory in 2019. We followed that up and issued a final report in March 22 with a good audit opinion. So there was a significant improvement there. In 1920, we had the PTU taxi contract unsatisfactory. The original one was in 2019, and we due to follow up in Q1 to 22-23. So this is the point you made earlier, Chair. It has now been followed up because the 2 reports don't quite tie up in terms of the dates. We have now followed that up, and as at end of June, it was still unsatisfactory in draft, awaiting management comments from the service area. With regards to corporate governance, issued a final unsatisfactory audit opinion in 2020 and due to follow up in this financial year. Great Music Support Service was originally unsatisfactory, and we did an interim review which was fairly positive, and we're just embarking on doing the actual follow-up review as we speak. We've had a discussion with the service manager. They've given us evidence that to demonstrate there are significant improvements in that area. But again, once we've undertaken the follow-up audit, we will report back into committee, hopefully with a more positive opinion. In 2021, the unsatisfactory review was on Newport City Dogs Home, and we're due to follow up this year. It's in the plan for 22-23. In 21-22, we issued 2 unsatisfactory opinions, mobile telephony and housing benefits, again, both due to be followed up in 22-23, and the reasons why we deemed those to be unsatisfactory are listed below. So on page 121, the mobile telephony one first is that we identified a number of significant issues, a number of moderate issues, and in terms of housing benefits, we identified a critical issue, significant issues, and some moderate issues. So that gives you a summary of why we deemed those particular audits to be unsatisfactory, without going into too much detail in terms of the action plan, etc., or the timescales in terms of when that's likely to improve. So, if I could just move members to the appendix, Chair. Appendix A is the opinions which we provide a definition of. Appendix B gives a bit more information about the adoption allowances, why we gave the original opinion with some significant, some moderate issues, but primarily, and that gave a reasonable opinion. The reason we changed our opinion was that when we looked to finalise the report, we were told that actually no work was being undertaken on adoption allowances. Jan, do you want to add anything onto that one? Adoption allowances?
Yes.
So just to update committee on that, so we have recently commenced the second follow-up review. So I met with the service managers last week. Things have improved. They have got procedures, policies in place. There is a backup plan now there that if there were staff absences as there was previously, that there's capability within the team to undertake the assessments as required. So it is looking more positive at the moment. Obviously, we're just embarking on the follow-up audit as we speak.
Thanks, Jan. So for committee's purposes, where we've had a consecutive unsatisfactory opinion previously, then my advice would be to members for you to call in the respective head of service, but obviously taking on board Jan's comments in this particular circumstance. So on that basis, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Questions? Councillor Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I would recommend, like Andrew said, bring the service manager in, but maybe might try and give a bit of a lenience on what he's doing there. Would that come back in Q2? If there's any improvement, if not, then bring him back in at maybe a Q3. If there's no improvement to be made on Q2.
Yes, Chair, we can do that. So we'll undertake the next review and then identify an opinion and then report back. And if it's still unsatisfactory, then advice to you would be to call them in. Is that what you intended to say, Chair?
I hear what Councillor Jordan says, but there may be an alternative recommendation come forward.
Yeah, I accept that.
For committee to consider. Cox.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could I just ask for clarification again? You've perhaps said it, but I was trying to take quite a lot in there. When the housing benefits, have you been? Sorry, I didn't get whether you'd been back again since December 21, or no? Right. Okay. And well, can I add on to that then? When would you be expecting to get back to housing, please? I don't expect you to give me an exact date, but, you know.
No, that's fine. No, that's fine. What we tend to do is try and get it done within a 12-month period. And we would go back and we would revisit that audit within a 12-month period. And I accept what the Chair said earlier in terms of that should be done a little bit quicker, perhaps, in some circumstances. But it's in the plan for 22-23, so we'll be doing it in this particular financial year.
First and then yourself, Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. I really wanted to make some comments in relation to the audit reports on.
If they're comments, can we just wait for
No, they're not.
They're questions?
Yes, there's a question.
Carry on.
Yeah, get to the question. But I need to set the context for the question in terms of when I read your findings, I was really very, very concerned. And I noticed in paragraph 16, you're talking about targeting your training at these sort of areas. But for me, it raised the issue of big weaknesses in the management. They're not following processes at the very basic management level, administrative level. And my question is, how effective is senior and middle management here? And, you know, who's actually monitoring the work that's being done? And is there a cultural issue here? It did raise quite a lot of concerns in my mind. And it wasn't just about financial training. It was about management.
See, I don't think I can comment on that because in terms of an internal audit, we're just looking at the control environment and what the information that's in front of us in terms of the evidence that we identify. It's something we could discuss with senior management and HR.
I think the recommendation which I will propose, which may be supported or not, then we may get those answers, Norma, because just leave it for the... If I tell you what the recommendation will be, and then you may get the answers from the people we may call in. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I didn't realise we got a meeting here in October, so I looked and I seen the 26th of January. So I think if we bring them the adoption allowance service manager in on the next meeting, I think it might give him a bit of a prompt then to get it in control by the next quarter. So give him a bit of a prompt, I think.
Do you want to respond? Okay, thanks. Yeah, we're in the process of doing the audit at the moment. It's unlikely it will be completed by the time the papers will be ready for your next committee, but that doesn't stop you from calling in the respective managers.
Any other questions? Councillor Cox? Oh, comments. Yeah. Anyone? No one? Comments now then? Councillor Cox?
First of all, I mean, reading the report, I'm particularly thinking about housing, actually. That what was good about the report, actually, was the work you've done, because as a new councillor, it's quite heartening to see the depth in which you go in to make sure that, you know, council services are functioning properly, and you clearly do that, and you know, that was something that was good to read. And but there's been a similar comment made. I mean, the first issue that struck me was, just to be quite blunt, what's going on, because it seems to me that it shouldn't take the internal audit group to go in there to sort out, to identify issues like that. I mean, I just wonder what kind of management processes are taking place and what sort of quality assurance is going on in terms of the work that's going on there. There seems to me a massive question around that. I know it was some time ago. It was last December that the report was dated, but obviously, as a member of this committee, it leaves me very much wondering what's going on there now and what has happened. And you know, with respect again to the internal audit team, that they've got a work schedule, they have to work to a programme, but it seems to me that it's quite inadequate that isn't. So, I mean, some of those issues where people are waiting for housing benefit needed sorting next week, it would appear to me, in some of those cases, you know, if internal audit are not getting in there until maybe sometime later this year, I would be very interested to know just what is going on to sort those problems out, because it's quite intolerable that they would have continued. So I suppose those are more a lot of questions, Chair, than a comment. But I was quite shocked by that in terms of what I've seen on this committee. That would probably shock me more than anything else I've read.
I think if you just take them as comments at the moment, I don't expect a response. Councillor Horton.
Comment-y question, I guess.
We've dealt with questions. Sorry. So you've been taking advantage of me otherwise.
Did you actually see anything good in this audit?
Yes, we did. As I said in my delivery of the report, we do a balanced review of everything we audit, so we identify strengths and weaknesses within the area which we're looking at. There were a number of strengths, but in this particular issue, the weaknesses outweighed the strengths. We don't report the strengths into audit committee because we report by exception. But just to reassure you, in terms of the payment of housing benefits, that wasn't delayed. We didn't pick that up as an issue. This relates to information collected on the housing side, in terms of the grant that we get from DWP.
In that case, Chair, I don't know if it's the right time to say this, but can I strongly agree with what you asked for, that we bring them in?
Clearly there's a set of recommendations in the paper. I will be asking for that to be changed, but before that happens, Don, did you want to make comments?
Yeah, I read the report, and I think it must be incredibly frustrating for you that you issue an unsatisfactory, because then you agree the timetables with the manager, which I'm assuming they agree to, and then they don't keep that. That must be very frustrating, and I think it must be very frustrating when there's, you know, a repeat offence again, and then I'm wondering, with us as a committee, that I think we need to support you in that. And I'm just wondering whether we as a committee should almost have like a quasi-standing order that if we see an unsatisfactory or an unsafe audit report that's not been rectified, that we just have a quasi-standing order that the director and the service manager are invited or required to attend the next meeting so they can actually tell us what's happening, so that we're in the picture as to why they're unable to adhere to the timetable that they've committed to, because that's what I think we're here for. So it's a comment and a suggestion, Chair.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Anyone else, any comments? No? Okay. I'd just like to say a few things. I read this report. I was actually appalled by some of it that's contained within this report. If we go to 2015-16 Norse, unsatisfactory in 2015-16, we're talking about nearly 7 years this has come, and I understand obviously it's based on 31st of March, it was unsatisfactory. I can understand all the issues about staffing, etc. But ultimately, if you've got an unsatisfactory report, then you would want to address that as quickly as possible in reality within your service area. And I understand obviously you've got a draft report now, and a final report will be coming. But I think, timeliness of these things, if it was an issue in 2015, we shouldn't be here in 2022 dealing with these issues. That's the first thing. Second thing, I'll deal with the adoption allowances. We've got the passenger transport unit, unsatisfactory previously. We've now got a second, I think, which was in the previous report, come in as an unsatisfactory. Once that's issued, I think, picking up Don's point, we will ask the appropriate officers to be called in to address those issues. Sorry, if I go back, on 2018-19, we've got the vehicle tracking system, unsatisfactory October 19, staffing issues. Again, we're dealing with issues which are now 3 years old in reality, and I'm not saying it, there's a staffing issue in audit or whatever, but again, these should have been resolved fairly swiftly in some respects. Corporate governance, I find corporate governance quite interesting about an unsatisfactory report in December 2020. And again, there's no outcome to that at the moment, and I would have hoped that in corporate governance terms, that was dealt with fairly quickly. And I'm not saying if I'd been on the committee then I would have asked for that to be done within sort of 6 months, because again, that's a real issue if you've got issues there. City Dogs Home, exactly the same there, unsatisfactory in December 2020, delay in follow-up due to unavailability of staff in the service. My view there to head of service, what's your view on this service? If they haven't got anyone there to come and talk to us, then, there's an issue there for me. Mobile telephony, slightly different, February 22 report, so that's only come out this year. Hopefully there's an action plan there being taken place, but I do think we need to know, I know you've got follow-up 2022, so we're either between now and March in reality, so I think that's issue. And the housing benefit one, which was raised, I'm pleased to hear it wasn't anything to do with payments, because again, that would have concerned me even more, because if the citizens of Newport weren't being paid, then there's a big issue, and in some respects goes to the adoption allowances. In regards to Appendix B, I just think there's maybe a typographical there in the third paragraph down where it starts, further inquiries were made. Have you got that? Fourth line down, it says, we were informed that not only was there a resource within the team to complete these assessments, but there was no other officer in Newport City Council sufficiently trained. So is that right? So there were officers there, or weren't there officers there?
I think this is a fair point here. I
should say it. They were.
There's a missing word. There should be no resources.
No, that's okay. Shows I read now and again. So that's that. So picking up all that and your recommendations, obviously we note the contents report, but there are serious concerns raised within it. The second recommendation is to consider calling in any specific heads of service if members of the governance not feel a requirement will be made. So obviously I think we can keep an eye on that one. But in regards to the adoption service, my recommendation for you to consider to this committee is that we call in the cabinet member and the director and possibly the chief exec, because this is a real big issue for us, I think, given it's not an issue for you in audit, it's an issue for this authority to be addressed. That we call in the cabinet member, the director and the chief executive to come and explain to this committee where we're at and what is happening, because I think that would address Norma's point, because Norma's raised many issues which you can't address and can only in reality be addressed by the director, and I think the cabinet member needs to hear it and the chief executive, and if it happens again in regards to the other unsatisfactories where we get to, which is the PTU and anything else, then it is likely that I will ask, subject to committee agreeing, to call in the director, not the head of service. We'll have the director and the cabinet member responsible and the chief exec. There needs to be a message given here that we cannot continue to allow this, you doing the work, to say that there's unsatisfactory practices with this authority, but they're not, we'll leave it for a couple of years. As chairman, I don't know what the committee is going to decide, but as chairman, I'm not prepared to accept that. I think it needs to be brought to a head, and the adoption allowances one is quite appalling, really. You can put all them explanations in place that we haven't got enough staff, we haven't got that. So, if you were in my seat, how do you explain that to the members of the public out there? How do you explain it? How do the councillors explain it to the members of the public? So that's my recommendation. Clearly it's a matter for you to whether or not you accept it or not. And I think the point, sorry, Rhys, in regards to in regards Don's point, I think there does need to be a point put in here. If we're going to get two unsatisfactories, then the likelihood is that we're wanting to call people in as a matter of urgency to deal with it. And the other thing I was going to ask, subject obviously to capacity here, I don't want these issues being put on an agenda with a lot of other issues. The next committee in October, we've got the annual accounts, if they do come, I think. We've got some other bits and pieces. I don't want to be bogged down in a discussion with the director and the cabinet member about these issues. I don't know how long they would take, but consideration I think needs to be given as to whether or not we just call a separate meeting for that. To get your feedback from what you saw there and then we get the feedback from the director and what he's going to do about it and how quick he's going to deal with it. Sorry, Rhys.
No, thanks, Chair. So I suppose point one about the cabinet member, we're going to have to check. I'm looking at the governance team now. We're going to have to check with the remit of the committee, because obviously these are operational matters rather than policy matters. So we'll have to check with that. But you could write to the cabinet member. I think that definitely, but we'll check with that, Chair, between now, depending on what the committee chooses to do. I suppose my only other advice would be about escalation points, because I think I hear what you're saying about the chief executive, but I think if you don't get the answers you want from the head of service and the director at the next meeting, you need somewhere to escalate to. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Okay. I'll be guided by you, but I'm sure the message will get back from you and the Director of Social Services to say enough's enough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, that would just be my advice. You might just want to hold that back for an escalation point.
But as long as if the suggestion, if I can't have the cabinet member here, then I think we will write as a committee to the cabinet member to express our concern. And I think also, if we can't get the chief exec here, then we'll write to the chief exec as well, express our concern as well as a committee, because I think issues like this, too unsatisfactory. Anyone in this room can say, well, it's okay, don't worry about it. I think it gives us great concern, and I think that's the issue. And mark my words, in regards to the whatever it is, taxis, we'll have the director in as well, and that. But subject to committee agreeing that recommendation. Councillor Horton.
Well, to follow on from what you were just saying, how many of the complaints are linked to what we're talking about now?
I don't know, and I think that's the issue that we could raise with the director, isn't it? Because it reverts back to the complaints issue, doesn't it? Some of these are interlinked, so I think that's an issue we raise. So, the recommendation then is that we note the contents and endorse and endorsed by the Governance and Audit. We note the contents of the report, and secondly, that in this instance we call in the Cabinet member, if we can, and the Director to the next meeting, which is in October, to deal with the adoption allowances services provision on the basis of the second consecutive and satisfactory audit opinion. Andrew, if I could ask you to provide us with a bit more background information on it, because we need to know a little bit more about, a couple of lines in here is thing, but we need to know well, in some respects, we need to see the report if we can. I don't know how big it is, but that would be useful, or a synopsis of the report. And picking up Don's point is that if we do have any unsatisfactory in the future, then there will be a request that the Director and the Cabinet member, if we can call them in, will be called in at the next appropriate meeting. Anyone prepared to move? Thank you, Councillor Horton. Seconded. Councillor Jordan. Can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you. Thank you for that, everyone. And item 9 then on the agenda is the work programme. Marion.
Chair, thank you. So we've got the audit of the financial statements report coming to the October meeting, and the intention there would be to receive the accounts, receive the auditor's external report on their audit, and then the committee would be asked to authorise myself and the chair to sign the accounts. Now, there's been a national issue across the UK on a particular issue. It's on the valuation of infrastructure assets on local authority accounts. An issue raised by auditors in England initially, but that's now sort of transferred into obviously Wales as well. SIPFA have tried to amend its accounting code to provide a workaround to this infrastructure valuation issue. That to date has not been successful. So the governments in all the devolved governments and also the UK government are now putting in regulations to override this kind of accounting issue. However, it will not be possible to get that done in time for us to finalise the actual accounts and then the audit. So I've asked Gareth and the audit director that they complete the audit in line with their original timetable, which probably would mean in the next sort of 2 to 3 weeks. They issue us an ISA 260, the auditor's report, with all matters on there, so that we can look at that. But we will not be able to issue the final version until this issue has been resolved. So we'll verbally update at the next meeting, Chair, if that's okay, but I strongly suspect that it will not be here for the October meeting. I don't know if Gareth wants to say anything, but I think it's a wait and see, I think, at this point.
Gareth?
Yeah, nothing really further to answer that, Chair. Thanks.
We can't hear you.
Sorry about that.
That's better.
Sorry, yeah. I'll see if I have the microphone by the mouse. Thanks, Marion, for that update. Nothing really other further to add, but just to emphasise, this is a national issue affecting local authorities across the UK. It's not specific to Newport in the slightest. And ultimately, it's just a matter of waiting for the statutory regulations to be issued to allow us then to be able to approve and certify the accounts. So, somewhat unfortunate timing, really, from our perspective, but still, the intention would be, as Marion set out, to present our audit report with that one matter still outstanding. So at least you see all the other issues arising and how they've been dealt with. And then, as a matter of course, then at some later date, we can arrange how to approve and certify the accounts once that final issue is resolved.
Thank you. Anything else, Myron? Programmes there?
Yeah, Chair, no, nothing from an angle. I just wanted to let you know about that one one issue there. So that will provide you with more time for the other matters that you raised in your meeting.
Sorry. Right. Okay. Are there any questions? Can I just ask a question? In regards to that, if they're not available for the 27th of October meeting, which you'll update us on, but they become available, say, on the 1st of November, is it okay to wait until the next committee, which is the 26th of January, or will we need an urgent meeting to sign them off? Because, again, time is of the essence for accounts, aren't they, normally? And I'm just wondering, with your guidance, what we should really do.
So Welsh Government are now considering changing the official deadlines for this. So I will need to understand what's happened with that first. That will probably be the deciding factor in how we might want to sort of do this one. I'm happy to do it as a single agenda special meeting if you want, but if it's possible to deal with it in January, that would also be possible. I'm quite keen, you know, if I'm being blunt, to get it sorted, because it is taking a focus away from a team that is already really under a lot of pressure. And even though the work is done and you've got a set of accounts in the sort of drawer, you still can't 100% move on. So I'd be tempted to call a meeting so that we can just get it sorted. But if I can update you in October on that, I think that's the best way forward.
That's the guidance I wanted. Long Democratic are happy with that, because it'd be easy to just get rid of them, really, isn't it? Because I'm sure your people are working on this year's accounts in some respects, you know. Even okay. Any questions? No. Any comments? No. You see the recommendation. We endorse the proposed schedule for future meetings. Confirm the list of people. Obviously, for the 27th of October, we want the director and the cabinet member, if we can call them in. If you can check that out.
At least service manager, head of service and director. And we'll
well,
see
the director can bring whoever he wants.
Yeah.
Or is it a she?
She.
Sorry. She can bring whoever she wants, but we want the director there. Sorry.
Sorry, Chair. If that person has changed roles, what obviously we don't want to do is somebody to sit in the chair and go, well, that wasn't me, that was somebody else. If that's somebody else, I'll defer to you.
We'll have the director there. The director is accountable and responsible for delivering the Social Services Committee to this authority, so they need to answer it, don't they?
I just want to make sure we've got the right person that can answer the question, rather than it wasn't me, it wasn't me.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll make sure
the right people
have
are
got
there.
the right people here for that conversation, and they're fully briefed, and you've got the right information before the
Thank you,
meeting.
Rhys.
We are their critical friend at the end of the day, aren't we?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, list of people. So you've got the list of people we'd like to invite in, and then indicate whether any additional information or research is required. So, in regards to the call-in, in regards to them coming in, we need some additional reports in regards to the background. Firstly, the first unsatisfactory, whether you can do a synopsis of whatever, and the second one as to what that is, if people are happy with that. Okay, someone prepared to move? Councillor Jordan, Councillor Horton, all in favour? Thank you very much. Right. And I think the date of the next meeting is the 27th of October 22 at 5 p.m. Can I thank everyone for attending and for your valuable contributions today? Can I thank the officers for attending, again for giving us excellent insight and information, even though it may be difficult on occasions, but thank you all for your time and effort. Same with Democratic Services for supporting us, and I now close the meeting. Thank you very much.